Welcome to Midweek, Experiments in Faithfulness. This is a weekly program where we learn and grow with each other in community. My name is Brent, and I am the Program and Engagement Manager here at Beacon Hill Friends House. We are a Quaker Center for Learning right in the heart of downtown Boston. We're home to Beacon Hill Friends Meeting, and we're also a residential community of about 20 people. This is a series where we're learning about the Enneagram. If you're not familiar with it, you can check out the overview I did called Why We Clash, Why We Click, where I give a summary of all 9 Enneagram types. Since then, every 2 weeks, we've been taking a closer look at one Enneagram type at a time, looking at exactly what makes each one amazing, unique, and absolutely crucial in the world. Tonight, we're going to take a deep dive into Type 8, the champion. Type 8s are fueled by a deep desire to assert control, protect themselves and others, and avoid being vulnerable. But what's really going on beneath the surface? Whether you're a Type 8 yourself, love someone who is, or just want to better understand this unique personality type, this session will leave you with insights and tools to appreciate their perspective and support their journey. All right. The Enneagram Type 8. Some people were born to hold the line, not out of pride, not for show, but because somewhere deep down, they know what it's like when no one does. That's the heartbeat of a Type 8. Eights move through the world with a kind of grounded intensity that says, you will not take advantage of me or anyone I love. They don't flinch at hard truths. They don't play small to make others comfortable. And they sure as heck don't wait around for permission to do what's right. Some people say they're intimidated by the 8. And to be honest, the 8 often earns that reputation with a fierce boldness that dares anyone to cross them. But they also use their boldness and strength to shield themselves and the people and principles that they stand for. They are justice driven, fiercely independent, and they have deep emotions that they rarely expose. Under all that armor, there's a tender, loyal heart that longs for trust, connection, realness. Eights value strength. For them, it's not ego, it's survival. And it's how they make sure others survive too. Today, we'll take a deeper look at the champion's world, how they lead, how they love, and how they walk the tightrope between power and vulnerability. You don't have to be bold or intense to resonate with Type 8. You just have to recognize the part of you that refuses to abandon what matters. Let's meet the protector, the challenger, the disruptor, the storm shelter in human form. Let's meet the Enneagram Type 8. The Type 8 doesn't just survive the storm, they become the storm when it's called for. At their core, 8s have a radar for injustice that and a natural instinct to step in, take charge, protect, restore order, and make things right. They're not intense for intensity's sake. That directness and strength is how they've learned to feel safe in a world that can be unpredictable and unfair. But there's so much more to the 8 than fire and force, heat and control. Behind that commanding energy is someone who craves trust, someone whose leadership includes warmth, whose strength includes realness, even if they don't show it right away. 8s are anchors in chaos, builders of safety, truth speakers who cut through the noise. Their growth isn't about softening who they are, it's about expanding what strength can look like. because the real magic of an eight isn't just in how fiercely they fight, it's in how deeply they care. Eights don't do anything halfway, not even their quirks. They've got a sixth sense of power shifts, a deep suspicion of nonsense, and a reputation for walking into a situation and immediately clocking what's really going on and who's running the show. They might act like they don't need anyone, but don't be fooled. They've probably already picked their people, claimed them, and are quietly guarding them with the ferocity of a dragon. They carry themselves like nothing shakes them, but they're also the first to carry someone else's burdens and jump into action or fight your battle like it's their own. They will question your logic. They'll poke holes in your plan and test your emotional range. And if they trust you enough to let you in, congratulations. You've earned access to a heart that is as deep as it is strong. Their love language is fierce loyalty, blunt honesty, and clearing a path when no one else will. Eights may not always show it, but behind every commanding stare is someone who's just trying to keep the people they love safe, including themselves. At their core, eights are driven by the need to be strong, not just physically, but emotionally, relationally, and spiritually. They've often learned early on that vulnerability can backfire. So they build a life where they call the shots. They don't rest easy unless they know they're in control. Control over their choices, their boundaries, and their space. They come alive in moments of challenge, when there's something real at stake, when someone needs protection, or when it's time to step up and speak the kind of truth that others are too afraid to say. More than anything, eights want to live with power, purpose, and integrity. They want a life built on purpose and self respect. They want the kind of power that lets them stand tall, stay grounded, and fight for what's right. To be an eight is to crave a world where no one gets pushed around, especially not the people they love. And if that means becoming a force of nature, so be it. They'll take the storm over silence every time. For type eights, fear doesn't show up with shaking hands or wide eyes. It shows up as control, intensity, and a quick instinct to shut the door before anyone can get too close. The core fear is being blindsided, powerless, at the mercy of someone else's choices. Eights often carry the unspoken belief that if they don't stay strong, the world will take advantage of them, or worse, the people they love. So they build walls, not because they don't feel, but because they feel deeply. And somewhere along the line, they learned that vulnerability can be pretty scary. They resist anything that feels like weakness, emotional dependence, being criticized publicly, needing help, admitting they were wrong, or maybe admitting that they didn't know something. Those things threaten their sense of control. Rather than risk being hurt, eights often armor up. They get louder, tougher, more decisive. But underneath that intensity is usually someone longing for safety, loyalty, and trust. So solid that it doesn't have to be tested. The challenge for eights isn't to stop being strong, it is to believe that they're safe enough to know that they can let their guard down and still be powerful. Type eights are bold, direct, and unafraid to step into the fire. They sometimes experience a dichotomy when it comes to how they perceive other people. They naturally rise to defend the underdog, stepping in front of the proverbial bus to take the hit for someone who's vulnerable. Imagine a fiery attorney whose life mission it is to bring justice and equity to those who are less fortunate in their community. On the other hand, if they think that a person is not doing everything they can to defend themselves, the eight can get impatient and short tempered with them. They'll likely pull out their list of resources and tell the person exactly what they need to do and how to do it. But if the vulnerable person doesn't seem to be taking any steps of their own to get out of their sticky situation, the eight may just lose respect for them and walk away. If they see that someone is trying to do everything they can but falling short, they will don their hero's cape and come to the rescue every time. Speaking of coming to the rescue, the eight is often financially secure. So coming to the rescue may involve some financial assistance. For an eight, it's hard to be independent when one's bank account is too skinny. So they prioritize their own financial independence. Accomplishing this may take different forms. They may seek out high paying careers that help them prepare for long term financial security. Or, if their career doesn't pay as well as they want, they may become hyper frugal to make sure that they can save as much as possible for any unexpected expenses. While the type 7 tends to be more flashy with their money, a type 8 is more private. For instance, instead of a bright red sports car that makes a statement about how much money someone has, the 8 may drive an old, reliable car that no one would turn their heads for. As long as there's money in the bank, they can sleep well at night with no need to impress anyone but themselves. As we've mentioned before, eights don't sugarcoat things. They don't beat around the bush. They tell it like it is because to them, truth is love, and love is protection. But with all that power comes some real internal pressure. Eights can accidentally dominate conversations or take up more space than they actually mean to. They might intimidate some people without even realizing it, just because they're being themselves. And this can bring emotions up for other people, such as frustration or fear. If the other person is willing to confront the eight with some no nonsense communication about how the eight's energy is affecting them, the eight will likely maintain deep respect for them. They like it when people are willing to say what's on their minds without beating around the bush. Eights have a complicated relationship with emotions, though. In themselves, emotions are often viewed as weakness, and they avoid that at all costs. When other people show emotions, they may have a hard time trusting that the emotions are authentic. Tears make many eights deeply uncomfortable, whether it's their own or coming from someone else. And when the tears are coming from others, the eight might question whether there is an ulterior motive for the tears. They might wonder, is that person trying to play the sympathy card? And because the eight sometimes lacks a filter, especially in their youth, they may react quickly and then regret it later. Their bluntness is refreshing until it isn't. Not everyone knows that it comes from a place of truth and care. Here's the thing, regardless what the eight wants you to believe, they aren't just tough, they're deeply tender. The real challenge is allowing that softness to come forward without fear that it will be used against them. The growth path for eights isn't about dimming their fire. It's about learning when to turn the volume down so others can join the conversation, not just survive it. When an eight falls in love, it's not casual. It is full body, full heart commitment. They love with loyalty, intensity, and a deep instinct to appreciate what matters. You'll never have to guess where you stand with an eight. If they're in, they're all in. Their love language often shows up through action. They defend, advocate, and show up, especially when it's hard. That said, emotional closeness doesn't come instantly. Eights take time to trust. They need to know that being vulnerable won't cost them their dignity or their power. And when that trust is earned, you get the rarest version of an eight: unarmored, open, and deeply affectionate. They're passionate lovers, fierce friends, and partners who will fight for the relationship just as hard as they fight with their partner in the relationship. Let's be honest. Fights might be more common for eights in love because they just don't hold back. When they care, they push. When they're scared, they challenge. And perhaps the biggest cause of the fights is that they tend to test your strength to see if you are really in it with them for the long haul. They can come in hot, direct, blunt, and emotionally intense, especially if they feel vulnerable or misunderstood. But the conflict isn't a sign of disconnection for the eight. It's a sign they're still invested. They'd rather argue than disappear. They'd rather storm through the mess than storm out the door. Their challenge is learning how to fight for the relationship without accidentally fighting in the relationship. Underneath the bravado is a heart that wants to be known and safe, not controlled, not exposed, but seen for who they really are. And when that kind of connection is real, eights will guard it with their life. Eights have a high tolerance for conflict, but a low tolerance for anything shady, like manipulation or betrayal. They can spot a hidden agenda from across the room, and nothing sets them off faster than feeling like someone's playing power games behind the scenes. They don't mind disagreement. In fact, they often welcome it, but the fight needs to be fair, direct, and honest. Imagine two people having a knockdown, drag out barroom brawl. And once they finish punching out their differences, they slap each other on the back, sit down at the bar for a drink together, smiling and laughing like nothing ever happened. Chances are these would be two type eights who had a few choice words for each other, directly and honestly. Even if it never goes to blows, this is a good analogy for how an eight may fight with someone who opposes their point of view, but ultimately respects the other person for standing their ground. But if you want the eight to respect you, you'd better come and talk to them directly instead of going behind their back, especially in public. Public criticism is another red flag. Eights will own their mistakes, but they expect respect. If they feel called out instead of called in, their defenses go up. And don't accuse them of being fake or insincere. If there's one thing eights value most, it's authenticity. They'd rather be too much than pretend to be someone they're not. Which brings us to one of their biggest pet peeves, which is fake politeness. Eights don't want niceties, they want the truth. If you're going to talk to them, say what you mean and mean what you say. They can handle brutal honesty. What they can't stand is dishonesty, dressed up as diplomacy. And finally, as we've mentioned before, eights are fiercely protective of the underdog, and they carry a deep sense of justice. If they see someone being exploited, mistreated, or silenced, you'll hear about it loudly. At their core, eights aren't angry because they like to go around being aggressive. They get angry when something feels unjust, fake, or fundamentally unsafe. And that anger, it's not just heat, It's protection, it's integrity, it's love delivered at full volume. So, what do they do about it? When an eight gets angry, it's usually fast, fierce, and instinctual. Their first move is to take control of the situation, raise the volume, take up space, assert their power. Sometimes it works. Other times it burns bridges that they didn't mean to burn. Eights often say exactly what they're thinking in the moment. If the anger feels too big, they might go silent. Not to sulk, but to keep from causing more damage. They'll often withdraw, physically or emotionally, until they feel grounded again. When hurt is involved, they may shove people away to avoid feeling exposed. It's easier for an eight to pretend something didn't hurt rather than to say, that actually wounded me. Their challenge isn't about feeling anger, it's letting someone close enough to see what's beneath it. Because more often than not, that fire is covering up fear, grief, or a deeper longing for connection. When an eight reacts strongly, it's not just about the moment in and of itself. Their intensity often is a defense mechanism, not an attack. They've learned that staying strong is the safest way to avoid being hurt. So when things get emotional or unpredictable, they start fortifying their inner fortress. They shut people out before anyone has the chance to strike first. They build walls with silence, sarcasm, or sheer force of will. Eights don't want to feel exposed. They fear that if someone sees their softness, it might be used against them. So they double down on power and control, hoping it will protect what matters and what's most tender inside. But beneath that wall is someone who wants connection, compassion, and empathy, but not at the cost of their dignity. So now let's talk about what gives an eight joy. Joy for an eight isn't always soft or sparkly. It's powerful, earned, and often a little rebellious. They feel alive when they're pushing limits, proving people wrong, or stepping into a challenge everyone else backed away from. For an eight, there's something exhilarating about standing their ground and saying the thing that no one else has the guts to say. That kind of truth telling lights them up. They love being the person others can count on in a crisis, not because they necessarily want to be needed, but because they know they can handle it. There's purpose in being that strong, steady presence when everyone else is falling apart. Eights find tremendous joy in being helpful, not in showy, performative ways, but in quiet, meaningful moments. They'll stir the soup, haul your luggage, or fix the thing that you didn't even know was broken. And they'll do it without needing any credit because showing up is just what they do. Watching someone they love rise into their own power, now that's a different kind of joy. It's the proud, emotional kind that they don't always show, but they feel deep in their bones, especially if they were part of helping that person find their voice. And then there are the quiet joys, a moment when they can drop the armor, let the world fade out, and just be with someone who doesn't demand performance or protection. Those moments are rare, but when they happen, they mean everything. They find joy in realness, in action, in impact, and in love that doesn't try to soften them, but sees their strength as part of the beauty. For an eight, joy is knowing they didn't back down from life. They showed up, fierce, real, and full hearted. and that they're still standing, still loving, still leading on their own terms. So, what is an eight like at work? Eights at work are a force, believe it or not, whether they're leading the charge or quietly running the show behind the scenes. As a boss, an eight is decisive and protective and mission driven. They'll champion their people fiercely as long as those people pull their weight. They don't micromanage because they don't want to be micromanaged. Trust and autonomy are the name of the game. They run a tight ship, though, but not a controlling one. They want results, not excuses. And if you bring your full self to the table, they'll have your back. As an employee, eights are independent, straightforward, and allergic to red tape. They hate pointless meetings, overcomplicated systems, or anything else that wastes their time. And anything that insults their intelligence is a deal breaker. They're natural problem solvers, the ones who say the thing that needs to be said in a meeting, even if it ruffles feathers. Well, especially if it ruffles feathers. Eights value workplaces where honesty is rewarded, not punished, where strength isn't seen as threatening, and where leadership is earned, not assigned. Whether they're running the place or challenging it from the inside, you'll always know where an eight stands. They bring intensity, loyalty, and laser focus, but only to places that earn their respect. All right, now let's talk about two important parts of the Enneagram that add motion and flexibility to the whole system: wings and arrows. Each of us has a core type, but we're not stuck there. We don't live in a box. We move, shift, react, grow, and that's exactly what wings and arrows help explain. Wings are the types sitting on either side of your core number. Think of them like nosy neighbors, always walking across the lawn to give their opinions about how you should live your life. They add extra flavor, texture, and behavior patterns to your main type. You don't become that type, but you borrow from it. Some people lean heavily on one wing, while others kind of shift between both, depending on the context. Now, arrows are the directional lines connecting your type to two other types. Some people say that one of your arrow types tends to show up when you're stressed or overwhelmed, and the other emerges when you're feeling confident and on top of your game. Other people, including me, think that you have access to both the positive and negative impulses of your arrow types, regardless of whether you're experiencing stress or strength. Either way, these arrows help explain those moments when you suddenly feel like you're acting a little bit out of character. Understanding wings and arrows lets us stop treating the Enneagram like a static label, and it turns it into more of a map, one that shows not just where you are, but where you can go when you need a different approach to the situation you're facing. When an eight is under stress, they don't always explode outward. Sometimes they retreat inward, especially if they experience some uncertainty. They really want people to view them as strong and capable and competent. But if they don't feel that way about a situation, instead of their usual direct take charge energy, they pull back. They get quiet, guarded, and deeply self contained. This is the eight moving to five, trying to protect themselves by hoarding their energy and their information and space. They may stop sharing their thoughts, or they may disappear emotionally or physically, or both. What they're really doing is regrouping, trying to get a grip on what feels out of control. But instead of staying connected, they tend to isolate. Instead of asking for help, they double down on self sufficiency. And while boundaries and solitude can be healthy, too much withdrawal cuts them off from the very people who could be offering some support. Going to the two is a little bit different. The eight has a bit of a reputation for being blunt and aggressive, and we can be honest about that. What gets talked about less often, though, is the eight's capacity for helping, generosity, and expansive love. When an eight is feeling confident and secure, something beautiful happens. Their demeanor softens and they engage with the people around them with a little bit less intensity. They recognize their emotions as coming from a place of strength, not weakness. They shift from defending themselves to caring for others, not as a strategy, but as a choice. This is the eight moving to two, where strength meets service, where power isn't just protection, it's devotion. They still lead, they still show up strong, but now with empathy and warmth and openness. They listen more, trust more, let themselves be impacted by love, both the love that they have for others and the love that they receive from others. This move makes them bigger, fuller, braver, because choosing healthy vulnerability is next level strength. And with a bit of intentionality, the eight can access this side of themselves quickly and seamlessly. In this space, eights become not just protectors, but nurturers, not just challengers, but champions of connection. Now let's talk about the wings. On one side, we have an eight with a seven wing. The seven wing brings the party animal out of the powerful eight. This version of eight is fast moving, adventurous, and unafraid to shake things up. They still crave control. They also want excitement, possibility, and momentum. They bring energy and charisma to everything they touch, fueled by passion and purpose. They're more likely to take risks, to laugh loudly, and rebound fast from setbacks. With the seven's influence, they're more likely to spend some of that money that they've been saving too. They might opt for a slightly sexier car than other eights would buy. They might spend a little more on their wardrobe. They might do more luxurious travel than a more frugal eight would consider doing. And that seven brings out their sharp wit too. Their leadership has some spark to it, perhaps a little bit of bling. But that seven energy can also amplify their restlessness. They might charge ahead without thinking something through, or avoid emotional discomfort by staying constantly in motion. Still, this wing adds levity, confidence, and magnetism to the eight's core. Think unstoppable force with a killer smile. Then we have the eight with a nine wing. The eight with a nine wing combines the strength of the eight with the transcendence of the nine. The type nine is called the peacemaker. So it would make sense then that the influence of the nine on the eight would bring a certain amount of zen to the eight's personality. They don't yell to be heard. And quite frankly, they don't have to. They command the silence. This version of eight brings a steadier, more grounded presence. Their protectiveness comes with a calm, collected edge that doesn't need to prove itself. They're slower to explode, more likely to keep the peace. Until pushed too far, that is. Then that quiet strength becomes an unshakable force. They lead by example, not by volume. There's a deep part of them that wants harmony, but they refuse to compromise their integrity or their boundaries to get it. This eight isn't just about domination, it's about dignity. The eight with the nine wing is often underestimated because of their calm demeanor, but that's a mistake. They're just as intense, just less flashy about it. Think majestic mountain instead of raging wildfire. So now let's take a look at the type 8 subtypes. Eights might all share the same core: power, protection, and independence. But the way they express that strength shifts depending on their subtype. The self preservation eight is the fortress builder. Their motto is, I must stay safe by controlling my environment. They're focused on safety, control, and taking care of what's theirs. They tend to be more private, disciplined, and careful with their energy. Think solid, self contained, and quite frankly, not here for your nonsense. The social eight is the people protector. Their motto is, I must stay safe by protecting the group. They channel their intensity into justice, advocacy, and big picture leadership. They're the ones who challenge authority on behalf of others. They're fierce, principled, and they know how to rally a crowd. The sexual eight brings the fire straight to the heart. Their motto is, I must stay safe through intensity and loyalty. This eight craves loyalty, passion, and quality one on one time with people they care about. They don't do lukewarm. If they're in, they're all in. They can be the most confrontational of the three, but also the most deeply devoted. Each subtype brings its own flavor to the champion's strength. Same fire, different fuel. So, as you know, we all carry a bit of the eight inside us. If you didn't know, you carry a bit of every Enneagram type inside of you, no matter how you identify. The eight inside of us is that part that is strong, in charge, and unshakable. It's the advocate who holds the line and stands up to anyone who tries to cross it. It's the one who stands up for the person who needs a champion. And it's also the part of us that loses our temper when things start to feel a little too vulnerable. We would do well to remember that strength without softness becomes armor. Think about the moments when you've clamped down instead of letting someone see your fear. The times when you took control, not because you wanted to, but because it felt like the only safe option. And what might happen if you let yourself be powerful and tender? Your inner eight doesn't need to pick just one. You can set boundaries and open your heart. You can stand firm and let someone hold your hand. When you're in relationship with an eight, it's easy to see the strength and the aggression and forget about the deep emotions underneath. Their inner intensity might feel like a challenge, but often it's a shield. So ask yourself, what are they protecting? What lessons have they had to learn the hard way, reinforcing their fortress? How can you stand beside them without trying to tame them? Eights don't need you to soften them, they need you to see them, to respect their strength and honor the tenderness underneath, to offer steady presence, honest feedback, and real connection without playing games. When you meet an eight with truth and loyalty, you'll find a heart that's been waiting to exhale. So, how can you love your eight? To love an eight is to witness power in its most human form. They don't always say what they feel, but they show up in ways that really matter. They provide, they protect, and they push because they care. And this is how they show it. They might not ask for reassurance, but they need to know that you won't flinch when they show their heart. So tell them that you see their strength and that you also see the softness underneath. Thank them for the way that they hold everything together. Remind them that their presence is enough, even when they're not fighting a battle. When you love an eight well, you give them space to lay down their armor. And when they do, you'll meet a loyalty deeper than words and a heart built for forever. Now, let's just see how much eight energy you're carrying around. This quiz will help you figure out whether type 8 is a strong part of who you are. We'll read 15 statements that reflect the typical thoughts, feelings, and behaviors of an 8, according to The Wisdom of the Enneagram by Riso and Hudson. For each one, you'll rate yourself on a scale from 1 to 5, with 1 meaning not at all true, and 5 meaning very true. Then we'll add up the scores and see where you land. I've copied the scale over to the next two slides so that you can keep track of what each number stands for. Now, this isn't a test, this is just an awareness tool. So, some of you might score high and feel completely seen. Others might see pieces of themselves in the eight here and there, but find that they resonate more with a different type. Either way, the goal isn't to put you in a box. It's to give you language for the patterns that already exist inside you. So trust your gut on each statement and don't be shy. Let's see whether the type 8 is central to how you show up in the world. Are you ready? Let's go. All right. 1. I am extremely independent and don't like having to rely on others for what I really need. Number 2. I resonate with the statement, you have to break some eggs to make an omelet. Number 3. When I care about people, I often begin to think of them as my people and feel like I need to watch out for their interests. Number 4. I know how to get results. I know how to reward people, and I also know how to put pressure on them to get things done. Number 5. I do not have much sympathy for those who are weak and vacillating. Weakness just invites trouble. Number 6. I am strong willed and do not give up or back down easily. Number 7. I am never prouder than when I see someone I've taken under my wing make it on their own. Number 8. I have a tender, even somewhat sentimental side that I show to very few people. Number 9. People who know me appreciate the fact that I talk straight to them and tell them exactly what's on my mind. Number 10, I've had to work hard for everything I have. I think struggle is good because it toughens you up and makes you clear about what you want. Number 11, I see myself as a challenger, as someone who pushes people beyond their comfort zone to achieve their best. Number 12, my sense of humor is earthy, sometimes even crude, although I think most people are too diplomatic or even thin skinned. Number 13, I can get into a towering rage, but it eventually blows over. Number 14, I feel most alive when I do what others think is impossible. I like to go to the edge and see if I can beat the odds. Number 15, somebody usually has to come up on the short end of the stick, and I don't want it to be me. Right. So now we have the results. Add your scores for the 15 statements for type 8. Your result will be somewhere between 15 and 75. The following guidelines may help you discover or confirm your personality type. If you got 15, you're probably not an assertive type like the type 3, 7, or 8. If you got 16 to 30, you're probably not a type 8. If you got 31 to 45, you most probably have some similar challenges as a type 8 and or have a type 8 parent. You got 46 to 60, you most likely have an 8 component, which means you are either you have an 8 on as a wing or you go to the 8 with one of your arrows. If you got 61 to 75, you are most likely a type 8. But you could still be another type if you're thinking too narrowly about the 8. So why this caution about thinking narrowly? Before you land on type 8, just take a moment to take a closer look at what's underneath the strength. Sure, you might be outspoken. You might hate being told what to do. Maybe people describe you as powerful, intense, or a natural leader. But many Enneagram types can be intense and powerful leaders. The Enneagram isn't just about how you show up, it's about why you show up that way. A lot of people are assertive, decisive, or protective. That doesn't automatically make them an 8. At its core, 8 energy is about avoiding vulnerability because vulnerability feels dangerous. It's the drive to stay in control, to never be blindsided, to never need anyone more than they need you. The core fear of the 8 isn't just weakness, it's betrayal, being exposed, being at someone else's mercy. So if you resonated with the 8, it's worth exploring. But ask yourself, am I taking charge because I believe in something or because I don't trust anyone else to handle it? Do I shut down emotionally when things get too real? Do I confuse independence with safety and power with protection? Being strong doesn't automatically mean you're an 8, and protecting yourself doesn't mean you're unfeeling. It means that this is how you've learned to survive. This isn't about choosing the type that sounds the toughest. It's about listening for the type that knows your core fear and invites you to grow beyond it. Now, eights are bold, intense, and unapologetically themselves, but that doesn't mean they're easy to type, especially if we confuse surface level behavior with core motivation. Let's start with how the eights might mistype as other types. Eights often mistype as sevens, especially if they're adventurous, high energy, and driven to stay ahead of discomfort. But while both types resist limitation, they're doing it for different reasons. Sevens fear being trapped in emotional pain. Eights fear being controlled, betrayed, or made vulnerable. A seven says, I need to stay free so I don't get stuck. An eight says, I need to stay strong so no one can hurt me. Eights may also mistype as sixes, especially counterphobic sixes who lean into conflict and authority questioning. But sixes are acting from a place of anxiety and loyalty. Eights are acting from a place of control and protection. A six says, I'll challenge you because I don't feel safe. An eight says, I'll challenge you to prove I am safe. And sometimes eights mistype as fours, especially if they're emotionally intense and fiercely individualistic. But the inner world tells a different story. Fours feel their vulnerability and seek meaning in it. Eights fear their vulnerability because it feels dangerous. A four says, let me feel this fully so I can understand myself. And eight says, let me stay strong so no one can use this against me. So now let's flip it. There are some types that mistake themselves for eights. Sevens, especially those with strong leadership energy, may think that they're eights due to their fast pace and defiance of limitation. But sevens are avoiding pain, eights are avoiding weakness. A seven says, let's keep moving. And eight says, let's take control. Sixes may mistake their intensity or loyalty for eight energy, especially if they've leaned into challenge rather than submit. But a six is scanning for threats. The eight is the threat, at least to anything that they don't trust. A six says, I need to challenge this so I can feel secure. An eight says, I need to challenge this so no one else will have power over me. Threes may see themselves as eights because they're assertive, image conscious, and in control. But threes are driven by achievement and approval. Eights, they don't need applause, they need autonomy. A three says, I need to succeed. An eight says, I need to not be controlled. So if you scored high on eight, ask yourself, am I pushing forward because I want power or because I don't trust anyone else to protect me? Am I acting strong to prove I am strong or because I'm afraid of what will happen if I'm not? Because being direct, bold, or dominant doesn't make you an eight. What makes you an eight is the core fear that if you don't stay in control, someone else will, and you'll be left exposed. That's what separates behavior from motivation. And that's where your real type lives. And now the slide that we've all been waiting for. The last slide is a little bit of humor for our favorite type eights, a guide to armor language. What I said, I don't need help. The translation, please help me. But then immediately forget that you did. What I said, that doesn't bother me. The translation, I will be thinking about this until I die. What I said, I'm not mad. The translation, I am conducting an internal trial and you will be sentenced shortly. What I said is, I'm fine. Translation, I have a ton of emotions and a strong opinion about all of them. What I said, you do you. What I meant, this is a test and you are currently failing. What I said, let's move on. Translation, you've got one chance to fix this before I become emotionally unreachable. What I said, it's not that deep. Translation, it's exactly that deep. I just don't trust you with it yet. What I said, whatever. The translation, I have 14 follow-up points and a PowerPoint presentation in my brain.